The wind of doomsday shaves from the broken streets, rolling up a dusty dust, as if the air is filled with a rotten smell. Chen Yi squatted behind the silver desk in the supermarket, holding a rock-shaped iron rod, his palms covered in sweat. His supermarket, or the shop that broke into pieces with all the glass windows, was already his only place to stay. Outside, the city has long been ruined. In the third month after the virus broke out, living people were harder to find than dead people. Click, a sound came from the entrance of the supermarket. Chen Yi suddenly slid his nerves and poked out his head to Zhang Wang. Through the smashed glass door, he saw several figures wandering around the corner, wearing torn clothes and holding something like a knife or a stick in his hands. The plunderer. He gritted his teeth and his heart sank. These guys have been ruthless since the end of the world, squeezing food, squeezing medicine, and even not adding a bottle of mineral water. Although his small supermarket has been looted several times, there are still some periods of drying and a few bottles of water left on the shelf, which is already a piece of fat for these people. Boss, there seems to be someone in this broken store. A sharp voice came from outside the door, and it was a low laugh. No matter who he is, go in and plunder it cleanly, and do it if you dare to resist. Another rough voice answered, and Chen Yi's heartbeat accelerated. He knew that he couldn't escape and had no place to run. The back door of the supermarket has long been blocked, and the only way out is to face the enemy head-on. He lowered his head and glanced at the iron rod in his hand, then glanced at the empty shelf, and smiled bitterly in his heart. At this point, I'm afraid I can't even save my life. At this moment, a cold mechanical sound suddenly rose in his brain. Infinite shelf system is being activated. The host's survival crisis is detected, and the system starts the emergency mode. Chen Yi was stunned and almost thought he had heard something wrong. System? What a ghost thing. Before he could react, a glimmer of light suddenly appeared on the shelf in front of him. Then, a bunch of things appeared on the empty shelf: cans, mineral water, compressed milk, and even a few new machetes and a bag of iron. What is going on? Chen Yi was stunned and reached out to pick up a bottle of water. The icy touch on the bottle told him that this was not an illusion. The sound of mechanical sound in the sea of brain rose again. The infinite shelf system has designated the host Chen Yi, and the shelf material will be infinitely supplemented. The host can extract resources at any time for survival and defense. First activation bonus: 1 set of basic trap kits, 3 simple weapons. Chen Yi's brain buzzed, but there was no time to think about it now. The snatcher outside the door was approaching, and his footsteps became clearer and clearer. He quickly grabbed a machete from the shelf, took out the trap kit, and found a few sharp thorns and a bundle of fine snails inside. He gritted his teeth and quickly set up a simple scattered trap at the entrance of the supermarket, burying the thorns on the ground behind the thorns. As long as someone is knocked down, what is greeted is the spike's hot hospitality. Bang! The broken door of the supermarket was kicked open by one foot, and 3 wielders fished in. The head full of flesh, holding a steel tube in their hands, grinned and said, "I'm really a person. Boy, please tell me what I have to give up the food, otherwise I will smash your brain with 1 stick." Chen Yi held the machete tightly, stood after the silver desk, and looked at them coldly. "This shop belongs to mine, and everything belongs to me. If you want to kill it, just see if you have any chance to take it." "Ha, there are so many kids." The head-headed plunder laughed and snatched his hand. "Brothers, get on. Kill him and take away everything." 3 people rushed towards Chen Yi, but the first one just took 2 steps and was hooked by the snail under his feet. The whole person fell down with a sound, and immediately let out a scream. The prick pierced his calf directly, and the blood instantly dyed the ground. 3 brothers. "Mom, this kid has a trap." Another robber roared, jumped over the snail, and rushed towards Chen Yi with a knife. Chen Yi's heartbeat was like a drum, but he knew that he had no way out. He suddenly stumbled on the other side, avoided the other side's sword, and then slashed on the other side's arm. Blood sprayed out. "Ah!" The man stepped back with his arms covering his arms, his face full of shock. The plunderer on the head saw the scene. His face was blue and gritted his teeth and said, "Based. I'm here. He slammed the steel tube and rushed towards Chen Yi. Chen Yi gasped and his brain moved quickly. He knew that his physical strength was limited and fighting hard was not an option. Snap at the shelf next to him, he suddenly noticed a bag of iron. The spirit flashed, grabbed a handful of iron and sprinkled it towards the other side. What's the thing? The wizard with his head was smashed by the iron and his face was blooming. He screamed in pain and walked in a row. Chen Yi took advantage of the opportunity to move forward and kicked his knee. The other party knelt on the ground, and the steel tube fell to the ground. Wait, we won't let you go. The thief gritted his teeth and did not dare to move anymore. He fled out of the supermarket with 2 injured subordinates. Chen Yi watched their backs disappear from the corner of the street, and then he breathed a sigh of relief and sat on the ground. The machete in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. He looked down at his shaking hands and murmured, I really did it. The system sound in the brain rises again. First protection is successful, bonus, a shelf supplementary basic medical supplies, and a simple set of anti-warming equipment. Chen Yi stood up and walked to the shelf. Sure enough, he saw a box of belts, a few bottles of disinfectant, and a set of old but solid protective vests. He picked up the belt and simply processed the small wound on his arm that had just been drawn, and was still digesting everything that had just happened. What exactly is this system? Why would he choose him? But no matter what, with this, he is at least no longer the fish meat on the chopping board. At this moment, another rapid sound of footsteps came from the supermarket door. Chen Yi suddenly grabbed the machete, looked over vigilantly, and heard a familiar voice shouting, Chen Yi. Is it you? I am Hui Qian. Hui Qian. Chen Yi was stunned and hurriedly walked over. Sure enough, he saw a gray girl standing at the door, with fatigue on her face, but there was still a bit of familiar warmth in her eyes. Hui Qian is his childhood sweetheart. She grew up together. After the outbreak of the end of the world, the two lost contact. Unexpectedly, she was still alive. It's really you. Hui Qian saw Chen Yi, and her eyes were filled with light, and she walked over and hugged him in a few steps. I thought you had been. I've been looking for you for a long time. Chen Yi patted her shoulder and smiled reluctantly. I'm fine, it's a bit bad in these few months. Why are you here? Hui Qian wiped her eyes and pointed behind her. I brought several people. They are all survivors who escaped nearby and have no place to go. I heard that there's a supermarket here that can hide, so I came here. Chen Yi looked at her, and there were 5 or 6 people standing outside the door, some old and young, all dressed in clothes and slutty, and his face was filled with shock and exhaustion. One of the old men was leaning on a crutch and said loudly, Little brother, we just want to find a place to hide and not snatch your things. Please take us in. Chen Yi was silent for a while, looking at the desperate look in the eyes of these people, and his heart was soft. He knew that it was not easy to survive in the end of the world, and it was already a miracle that these people could live to this day. He looked down at the newly replenished items on the shelf and gritted his teeth and said, Okay, you come in. But I have the condition that everyone has to protect this place together and cannot let the plunder come and get upset again. Of course. We hear you. A young man was busy, and the others agreed, with the light of hope on his face. Hui Qian pulled Chen Yi's sleeve and said in a low voice, Are you really going to take them in? Those snatchers outside will not be good at ease. I just heard them on the way to come and said they were going to report it. Chen Yi pointed his head and looked calm. I know. But if we don't join us, no one can survive. This supermarket is now my floorboard and our hope. I won't let anyone take it away. Hui Qian looked at him, and felt relieved in her eyes. You are still the same, always so stubborn. Okay, I will help you. I know some medical knowledge. There are a few of these people who have been injured, so I can help you. Then I'll bother you. Chen Yi smiled, then turned to look at the survivors, and shouted, Everyone comes in, block the door, it's not safe outside. From today on, this is our home, let's protect it together. A low response and voice came from the crowd, although weak, but it brought a long-lasting hope. Chen Yi watched them busy moving things and blocking the door, and an inexplicable sense of responsibility swelled in his heart. He knew that the plunder would not rest here, and the days ahead would only be more difficult. But with the system and with these people, he is no longer alone. He held the machete in his hand tightly, looked at the dusty sky outside the window, and murmured in a low voice, "No matter how many people come, I will guard this place. Above the wasteland, this supermarket is our place of hope." As night fell, the cold wind on the wasteland poured in through the broken windows of the supermarket, bringing a biting chill. Chen Yi sat behind the silver table, and in front of him was a pile of supplies that had just been removed from the shelf: a few bottles of water, a few packs of compressed buns, and some belts and disinfectant. He lowered his head and cleared these things, his eyebrows tightly locked. There are more than a dozen people in the supermarket. Although there is a system to supplement the materials, these people consume a lot of money every day. If they continue for a long time, they must find ways to make this place safer and more stable. "Chen Yi, are you not sleeping yet?" Hui Qian's voice came from the side. She was holding a bowl of hot water and a little tired on her face. Just now, she was busy changing medicine to several injured survivors, and her throat was a little scared. "I can't sleep." Chen Yi raised his head and smiled reluctantly. "There are so many people in this place. I have to think about how to keep everyone alive. Those plunderers outside are probably coming back soon." Hui Qian pointed the head, gave him the hot water, and said in a low voice, "I just heard a few new people saying that there was a guy named Chen Yi outside, who was the head of the plunderers, and he had 20 or 30 people under his command, specializing in the survivors' resources. They were beaten away by you last time, so they would definitely not be able to stop." "Chen Yi." Chen Yi murmured and repeated the name, his eyes cold. He knew that there were so many groups of plunderers in the end of the world, relying on violent robber resources and regardless of the life or death of others. If they don't prepare well, the supermarket will sooner or later be targeted by them, and even be their own pocket. At this moment, the system sound in the brain suddenly sounded. The number of people in the host shelter has increased, the survival pressure has been increased, and the new function is unlocked: anti-upgrade module. Hosts can use existing resources to replace basic protection facilities to enhance shelter security. Chen Yi was stunned and kept silently chanting in his brain, "Defense upgrade module? What can I change?" Currently exchangeable projects: simple iron network, 10 units of materials; enhanced wooden board, 5 units of materials; basic trap kit, 8 units of materials. Materials units can be replaced through the basic resources supplemented by shelf, and the current stock, 30 units. Chen Yi's eyes lit up, he glanced at the materials around him, and quickly calculated. The things on the shelf can be replenished infinitely, but the system seems to have its own conversion rules. For example, a bottle of water is counted as 1 unit, and a pack of compressed and dried puffs is counted as 1 unit. He immediately decided to convert these resources into defense facilities first, and survived first. Switch the iron net and the 2 trap kits. He murmured silently, and then he saw a glimmer of light flashing on the shelf, and the few bottles of water and puffs were dried and disappeared, and a bundle of iron net and the 2 trap kits appeared on the shelf. Although the iron network looks a bit rough, it is very solid. The trap kit has spikes, zippers and several cushion parts, which can help him set up several anti-guard points around the supermarket. "Chen Yi, are you fucking?" Hui Qian couldn't help asking as he watched him move things from the shelf. "Please, some anti-preventive measures." Chen Yi didn't raise his head and said to the side of the iron net, "The doors and windows here are so broken that they are so broken. We need to have some strength when the victims come again. You go and greet everyone, and move the broken tables and chairs over. Let's block the door first, and then pull up the iron net." Hui Qian pointed at the head. Although she didn't understand where Chen Yi came from, she didn't ask much and turned around and asked someone to help. Not long after, all the survivors in the supermarket started to move. Although everyone had limited physical strength, they all said that they were trying to prevent plunderers. A young man named Li Chan. He was a construction worker before and was very powerful. He helped Chen Yi fix the wire net to the door and the window, and reinforced the back door with broken wooden boards. Another middle-aged woman named Mrs. Wang brought several people to pile up all the broken furniture that could be used in the supermarket at the entrance, forcing a simple roadblock. "Brother Chen, are these iron wires really effective?" Li Chang wiped his sweat and pointed to the iron wires at the door and asked, "Why do I look like a broken slut?" "Don't underestimate this." Chen Yi grinned and patted the iron network. "Although it's not very good-looking, it can at least delay time. I'll get a few more traps and bury them outside the door. Who dares to be tough and let them suffer first?" He said. He picked up the trap kit, squatted far from the supermarket door, and began to dig a hole to bury the spikes, with thin soil and rags on it as a disguise. Another trap is a simple cord, which is connected with a bunch of iron cans. Once someone touches it, the cans fall and smash them. Although it is not fatal, it can scare people and reminds people in the supermarket that they are vicious. After working hard for a long time, Chen Yi stood up, wiped the sweat from his head, and looked at the initially formed defense line in front of him, and felt a little bit in his heart. He looked back at the busy people in the supermarket and found that Hui Qian was giving a little girl a wound on her hand, with a gentle smile on her face, and the eyes of several survivors next to her were full of gratitude when they looked at her. "Hui Qian, thank you for your hard work." Chen Yi walked over and said in a low voice, "With you here, everyone's feelings have become much more stable." Hui Qian raised her head and smiled, "I just do what I can. You are the most tired. You have done these defense measures. Everyone sees them in their eyes and thinks there is hope for you." Chen Yi slapped his head, but he didn't say anything, but turned around and looked at the dark street outside the window, feeling a little uneasy. He knew that these simple defense measures could only deal with small-scale attacks, and if the plunderers really attacked, these things would not be enough. He must think of ways to make a harder outfit. At this moment, the system sounded again. The host has completed its first anti-access installation and unlocked the new function, Material Exchange to Advance Module. The host can use the resources to change to higher-level equipment and weapons. Currently, it can be replaced: simple weapons bank, 50 units of materials, base power bar, 20 units of materials, and anti-iron shield, 30 units of materials. Chen Yi's eyes lit up. Is it easy to have a weapon database? This sounds very useful. He glanced at the shelf and found that there were only 10 units left in the stock, which obviously did not change the weapon database. He gritted his teeth and said silently, "Try changing a stick first." With his instructions, the shelf flashed again, 20 units of materials disappeared, and a rough but arc spark appeared on the shelf. Chen Yi picked up the electric rod, pressed the switch, and heard a sizzling sound, and blue electric light appeared on the top of the rod, which looked quite powerful. "This thing is good." He grinned, and put the electric stick around his waist, giving him a little more rest in his heart. Later, he turned around and shouted to Li Chang, "Zheng, come and help me, move more things on the shelves, so we can get some resources and change better equipment." "Okay, Brother Chen." Li Chang responded and began to organize the supplies on the shelves with several people. Chen Yi took the opportunity to sit aside, calculating the next plan. He knew that although the current defense in the supermarket was a bit shaky, it was not enough manpower and weapons. If more survivors could be attracted to join, it would be able to divide the pressure and even form a team like that. The next morning, Chen Yi asked Mrs. Wang and a few women to hang the supermarket's clean rags at the door and write the words "safety shelter, food and water," which is a simple sign. He also deliberately asked Hui Qian to bring several people to the surrounding streets and told them that shelter could be provided here, but the premise was that they had to listen to the instructions and guard the supermarket together. As expected, after the news was released, survivors came to the door. Some are lonely wanderers, and some are families who are struggling with their families to escape. Although they are yellow-skinned, they have a lot of hope in their eyes. By the evening, the number of people in the supermarket had increased to more than 30. Although the space was a bit sluggish, the atmosphere became more and more popular. "Chen Yi, will the material resources be poor if this continues?" Hui Qian took advantage of the empty file that distributed food to others and asked in a low voice. "Don't worry, I have a way." Chen Yi patted the shelf and said with a calm language. As long as everyone joins together, this place can be carried down. You continue to calm everyone down, and I'll go outside to patrol. He picked up the electric rod and walked out of the supermarket with Li Chang and a few young men, checking the traps and defense lines around him. However, as soon as I walked to the corner, I heard a deep sound of footsteps coming from afar. Chen Yi's heart tightened and signaled everyone to hide behind the roadblock, and said in a low voice, "Be careful, someone is here." Sometimes, several people wearing ragged leather jackets appeared in the video, holding a knife and a stick in their hands, and a rude smile on their faces. One of the naked men glanced at the wire net at the entrance of the supermarket and snorted coldly, "This broken place has really been guarded. It seems that there are a lot of good things in it. Go back and tell Boss Shan to let him bring people over. We will give this spot tonight. Bad luck." Li Chang gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, holding the iron rod in his hand and preparing to pull it out. Chen Yi held him down and said with a slam, "Don't urge, they are crowded, let's leave first, let's go back and prepare." After the man with a few people turned away, Chen Yi and his group quickly returned to the supermarket and told everyone about the situation. The atmosphere was always tight. Hui Qian whispered her eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Hear their voices, I guess there will be actions tonight, so we have to be prepared." Yes, everyone listened. Chen Yi stood in front of a broken table and shouted, "The plunderers may come to worry tonight, but this place is our home, and no one can take it away." The young man guarded the door with me, stayed with the older ones and children, and helped to move things and block the door. "Hui Qian, you are responsible for taking care of the injured and support us at any time." "Okay." A low voice came from the crowd. Although it was filled with fear, it was more determined. Chen Yi looked at their eyes and felt a sense of responsibility. He knew that this battle was not only to keep the supermarket, but also to let these people see hope. The night is getting deeper and deeper, and the surroundings of the supermarket are terrifyingly quiet. Chen Yi held Li Chang and several young men at the door, holding the electric rod in his hand, staring at the streets as he stared at the head. Suddenly, a rapid sound of footsteps broke the silence, and more than a dozen plunderers walked out of the darkness. The one who was wearing the light man before, holding a raw machete in his hand, grinned and said, "Boy, the people in it have heard it well, hand over the materials, otherwise I will kill you all." "Stop talking." Chen Yi snorted coldly, stood behind the iron network, and whispered, "This place belongs to us. If you want to kill it, just see if you have any life." "Ha, your mouth is very hard." The naked man snatched his hand. "Brothers, get on. Smash this broken defense line." The thief rushed up, but the first person who had hit the front of the iron net was immediately knocked down, and a trap was found under his feet, and the spikes pierced his palms directly, causing him to scream. Then, another touching machine found a sliver, and a pile of iron cans were smashed down, smashing him to the point of bleeding. "Mom, there is a trap." The man with light roared, slashed the iron net with a knife, and rushed in with several people. Chen Yi saw the situation and immediately met. The electric rod slammed and sizzled, and the light hit a slasher's chest. The other party twitched and fell to the ground. "Brother Chen, fuck you beautifully!" Li Chang yelled, and smashed the dancer at another plunderer, and the two sides instantly mixed together. Although there are few people in the supermarket, relying on traps and terrain advantages, we have been able to seize the first wave of attacks. Chen Yi slapped the electric rod and pointed loudly, "Don't worry, guard the roadblocks, don't let them come in." During the battle, the naked man looked at Chen Yi's shoulder with a knife. Chen Yi reacted quickly, and he hid from his side, and the electric rod poked hard on the other party's waist. The naked man screamed in pain and stumbled back. He gritted his teeth and stared at Chen Yi, and said with a hatred, "Boy, wait, Boss Shan won't let you go. Let's go." The plunderers saw that the bad luck was not good, dragged a few injured companions and retreated in shame. Chen Yi watched their backs disappear into the night, and breathed a sigh of relief, turning to everyone, "It's okay, right? Clear the number of people." "Brother Chen, we're fine." Li Chang grinned. Although there was a hole in his arm, he was full of energy. Several other young people were also struggling to find their heads, and their faces were filled with the blessings of being born after the disaster. Hui Qian ran out of the supermarket, checked everyone's injuries, and said relaxedly, "Okay, the injury is not serious, I'll deal with it." Chen Yi looked at the head, looking at the gratitude and trust in the eyes of the people around him, and his heart felt warm. He knew that the small-scale victory not only guarded the supermarket, but also gave everyone confidence in him. But he also knew that behind the name Zhanlingzhu, there was a greater threat waiting for them. He lowered his head and glanced at the electric rod in his hand and silently said, "System, what can I change when changing material resources? We need to prepare more. Current inventory of materials, 15 units, can be replaced and updated." The system sounded. Chen Yi's eyes froze, he clasped his fists tightly, and he secretly swears in his heart, no matter how many plunderers come, he must guard this place of hope. The night was as dark as ink, and the cold wind on the wasteland was scraping faster, and it blew into the broken windows of the supermarket with the biting coldness. Chen Yi stood at the door, holding the electric rod, staring at the streets as he looked at the head. Although the small-scale confrontation forced the plunder to retreat, he knew in his heart that this was just the calmness before the storm. The name of Riceho is like a stone pressing on his chest, making him unable to relax. "Brother Chen, I just ran very fast. I guess I didn't dare to come back in a short time, right?" Li Chang stood aside, rubbing the blood on the rod, and watching a few points in his language. The wound on his arm had been simply wrapped by Hui Qian, and he looked quite energetic. "Don't be careless." Chen Yi shook his head and said in a low voice, "They mentioned Zhan Zi in their mouths. They were a big shot, and they must have many subordinates. That wave was just a trial, and the real trouble was still behind." Hui Qian walked out of the supermarket, holding a bottle of disinfectant in her hand. When she heard Chen Yi's words, she browsed. If it's really a large-scale attack, our defense measures are probably not enough. "Chen Yi, what are your plans?" Chen Yi was silent for a while, glanced at the shelf, and said in a low voice, "I have a way to get more equipment, but it takes time. Everyone should take a break and keep their energy. I'll go to the door to guard it, and I'll call you right away." He said it lightly, but he was not sure. Although the system's material exchange is magical, the current stock is limited, so most of the resources have been spent on changing the power stick. He silently recited in his brain, "System, what else can be replaced? It's best to deal with large-scale enemies. Current material stock, 15 units, the host is detected to face high-level threats, and the advanced exchange items are temporarily unlocked. Easy blasting lightning, 25 units of material, strengthened steel crossbow, 20 units of material, group defense iron network, 30 units of material." The host can replenish more materials through the shelf for replacement. The system's mechanical sound came to an end, and Chen Yi's eyes lit up. "Blasting thunder? This thing is good to hear," he murmured, and immediately glanced at the shelf and found that the stock of the material was not enough. He immediately decided to replenish the shelves with a batch of basic resources, such as compressing drying and mineral water. These were all considered 1 unit of material resources. After storing 25 units, he changed a simple explosion lightning without hesitation. The shelf is flashing with a shimmer, and a metal ball with a rough surface appears on the shelf. A simple explanation is also attached to it. The pull ring detonates, delays for 5 seconds, and the explosion range is 5 meters, which is suitable for preventing or ambushing. Chen Yi carefully picked up the explosion thunder, and his heart became more confident. Although this thing looks inconspicuous, it may be possible to reverse the situation at the critical moment. "Chen Yi, what are you doing?" Hui Qian walked over and couldn't help asking when she saw the strange metal ball in his hand. "It's something for self-defense." Chen Yi smiled, without much explanation, and put the blasting spoil in his pocket. Then he said to her, "Go and calm everyone down and let them not panic. I have a feeling that there will be no peace tonight." Hui Qian pointed at the head, although she was full of doubts, but she still turned back to take care of the injured. Chen Yi, carrying Li Chang and a few young people, began to check the traps and defense lines around him, and buried the blasting lightning next to a trap at the door, with thin soil and rags on it as a disguise. As long as someone touches a nearby snail, this thing can be put on the table. As time passed, the night became deeper and deeper, and the atmosphere in the supermarket became more and more intense. Just when Chen Yi thought he might be safe tonight, the street suddenly heard a rapid sound of footsteps, accompanied by the sound of a low spell and a metal collision. He felt nervous and said to Li Chang in a low voice, "Come on, let everyone know and prepare for the battle." Li Chang pointed his head and ran back to the supermarket to call for someone. Not long after, more than a dozen young and powerful survivors gathered at the door, holding rods, machetes, and even a few simplistic weapons that were replaced from the shelves. Hui Qian hid behind the supermarket with several women and children, ready to treat the injured at any time. I heard it all. Chen Yi stood behind the iron network and shouted, "No matter how many people come, we must guard this place. Hold the roadblocks, don't let them come in, listen to me." "I understand." The crowd was calm. Although there was a tight sound in the sound, their eyes were full of determination. As his footsteps approached, more than 30 figures gradually appeared in the darkness. They were wearing torn leather jackets, holding various weapons in their hands, from machetes to steel tubes, and even several people carrying homemade long spears. The head was a tall man with a beard on his face and a long scar on his left face. His eyes were as cold as a poisonous snake. He glanced at the supermarket's defense line and sneered, with a low voice and a sandy voice, "I heard that this broken place is quite hard, even my subordinates dare to fight. I'm Chen Yi. Come and see today, how many lives do you have? Show the horn." Chen Yi gritted his teeth and his heart sank. This guy came indeed, and he brought more people than he expected. There are more than 30 people, and there are less than 20 people here who can fight, and the pressure is huge. Stop talking. Chen Yi stood up straight, held the electric rod tightly, and said coldly, "This place belongs to us, whoever comes to snatch it is left. If you want to try it, just see if you have the fate to come in." "Ha ha ha, boy is very hard." Zhang Zijia grinned and snatched his hand, "Brothers, give it to me. After removing this broken defense line, all the things inside are ours." The plunderers roared and bees up, and the iron net was instantly smashed with a knife and stick. The first wave of people in front of him stepped on a trap and immediately caught a snail. The spike directly pierced several people's palms, clambering to the night sky. Then, another plunderer stepped on the area where the blasting thunder was buried. Chen Yi saw the situation and quickly opened the distance, shouting in a low voice, "Everyone retreat." Bang! There was a huge sound, and the explosion thunder was touched. The flames and smoke instantly swallowed up several plunderers. 5 or 6 people in the explosion were blown to the ground, and the others were also overturned by the impact waves, making their faces shocked. "Mom, what's the thing?" Zhang Zijie was stunned by the sound of the explosion and immediately roared, "This kid has explosives. Be careful, don't get rid of it, wrap it up, and slowly grind them to death." Although the plunderers were so excited that they were blown up, they were crowded and quickly adjusted their strategies, divided into several teams, approaching the supermarket from different directions. Chen Yi saw the situation and felt nervous, knowing that hard work is not the way to do it. He quickly recited silently in his brain, "System, how much material stock is left? What can I change? Current inventory of materials, 10 units, shelves are being replenished, and it is expected to reach 30 units in 5 minutes. Can be replaced at a time, strengthened crossbow, 20 units of materials, need to wait for replenishment. 5 minutes. Chen Yi gritted his teeth, knowing that time was not waiting for anyone. He shouted to Li Chang at the side, "Teacher, take a few people to guard the left, I'll go to the top of the right for a while. Delay the time and don't let them come in." "Okay, Brother Chen." Li Chang pointed his head and used a few people to guard the roadblock on the left with a rod and a machete. Chen Yi pushed to the right, and a thug passed over the iron net and slashed with a knife. He dodged from his side, and the electric rod poked hard on the other party's chest. With a sizzling sound, the other party twitched and fell to the ground. But there were too many plunderers. Chen Yi solved one, and the other came up again. The knife wiped his shoulder and drew a blood mark. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain, kicked the other person with one foot, and then hit the other person in the head, forcing him to retreat a few steps. "Chen Yi, be careful." Hui Qian's voice came from behind. She just helped the injured survivor to take care of her. When she raised her head, she saw Chen Yi being surrounded by several people and couldn't help but shout. Although she would not fight, she quickly grabbed a bottle of disinfectant, pushed it to the door, and swung it towards the eyes of a wielder. Ah! The man was stinged with pain, covered his eyes and retreated, giving Chen Yi a breath. He looked back at Hui Qian and said gratefully, "Thank you, go back and take care of the injured, and hand it over to me here." Hui Qian bit her lip. Although she was worried, she still returned it to the supermarket to continue to treat the injured. She wrapped the bags and shouted to the people around her, "Don't be afraid, Chen Yi and the others are standing in front, we have to help. Move all the useful things over, block the back door, and don't let people come in." Although the elderly and children in the supermarket could not participate, when they heard Hui Qian's words, they gritted their teeth to help, moving tables, piled sandbags, and even made simple ropes with rags to help strengthen the defense lines. Hui Qian looked at their busy figures and her voice choked and calmed down. "We can definitely hold on. Chen Yi will not disappoint us, so don't give up." The battle outside became more and more intense. Although Chen Yi relied on the electric rod to knock down 5 or 6 wicketers, his physical strength was still insufficient. Under the guidance of the wizard, the plunderers began to attack with long spears and stones at a distance, and the wire nets and roadblocks were smashed to pieces. Li Chang's side was also very stressful, and several people were covered in color and were reluctant to support them. "Boys, you're pretty good." Zhan Zi stood behind, sneering at the battle, "but that's the end. Give me all my strength, who'll go in first and collect a box of cans?" Under the re-earning, the plunderers' enthusiasm was greatly boosted and they rushed to the supermarket like crazy. Chen Yi saw the situation and his heart sank, knowing that if he dragged it down, the defense would be broken. He gritted his teeth and recited silently in his brain, "System, have the material resources been replenished? Change the crossbow for me. Shelf replenishment has been completed, current material inventory, 35 units, the transformation of the reinforced crossbow was successful." As the system sounded, a shimmer flashed from the shelf, and a rough but solid crossbow appeared on the shelf, with a small bag of arrows beside it. Chen Yi quickly rushed to the shelf, picked up the crossbow, quickly turned the strings, and targeted the several scoundrels who were in the front. Swoosh dash! The first arrow shot out and hit a wielder in the shoulder. The other party yelled and fell to the ground. Chen Yi kept moving, shooting 3 arrows, and knocked down 2 more people, forcing the other plunderers to retreat and seek cover to avoid them. "Mom, this kid has a crossbow arrow." Zhan Zisho's face changed, but he didn't expect that Chen Yi had such a weapon. He gritted his teeth and growled, "Don't be afraid, he doesn't have many arrows, so he can kill him." Chen Yi knew that his arrows were limited and he could not waste money, so he changed his strategy and specifically pointed out the person in front to shoot, and at the same time instructed Li Chang and others to delay time with rods and traps. The battle was in a stalemate, and both sides paid a considerable price. Several people were injured and retreated in the supermarket, and the plunderers were also seriously injured by crossbows and traps. More than 10 people lay on the ground, some of whom were unknown in life and death. "Boss, if this continues, we will lose too much." A subordinate of the plunder rushed to Zhan Zi's body and said in a low voice, "This kid is too evil, and his weapons are one after another. If we attack him again, we may have to be completely defeated." Zhan Zi's face was blue, glared at the direction of the supermarket, and gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, you have a kind of thing. Let's let you go today, let's go." Chen Yi watched their backs disappear into the night, breathing a sigh of relief, almost sitting on the ground. The crossbow fell to the ground with a clang and he looked down at his bloody arms, and smiled bitterly. "This guy is really hard to deal with." "Chen Yi, are you okay?" Hui Qian rushed over and saw the wound on his body. Her eyes turned red, and she hurriedly took out a belt to help him with the bag. Other survivors also surrounded the face, carrying the joy of living after the disaster and their gratitude to Chen Yi. "Brother Chen, it's awesome. If it weren't for you, we would definitely be finished tonight." Li Chang grinned. Although he was also full of color, his language was full of admiration. "Don't say these." Chen Yi raised his hand, stood up, and the audience was filled with a low voice. "Everyone has worked hard, but this battle tells us that being held is not a long-term plan. Zhan Zi will not be good at silence. If we come again next time, we may not be able to stand up. What should we do? We have few people and we don't have enough weapons. We can't always be beaten by them, right?" a young man couldn't help but ask. Chen Yi was silent for a while, his eyes calmed down. "You can't wait for death, we have to take the initiative to attack. I plan to find out where their nest is, find a chance to counterattack, and pinch the threat to the source." "Take the attack?" Li Chang was stunned and immediately pointed. "Okay, Brother Chen, I'll go with you. If this helps the beast, we will never be at ease." Hui Qian glanced at her eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Chen Yi, this is too dangerous. You were injured just now. Any accidents happen to you?" "I know." Chen Yi interrupted her, calming her temper, "But if you don't solve the problem, supermarkets will always be their goal. I don't want to be myself, but I have to consider everyone's safety. Don't worry, I'll be careful." Hui Qian wanted to say something, but looking at Chen Yi's determined look, she finally didn't object anymore, but just said in a low voice, "Then you agree to me, you have to come back no matter what." Chen Yi clicked her head, patted her shoulder, and then turned to everyone. "Everyone will rest tonight, and the injured will be handed over to Hui Qian for care. Tomorrow morning, Jing Zi and I will take a few people out to explore the way, and the rest will guard the supermarket, so that small groups of plunderers will take advantage of the situation." "Okay." The crowd was filled with emotion. Although they were tired, there was a lot of hope in their eyes. Chen Yi looked at them and felt a sense of responsibility. He knew that this road was not easy to walk, but he had no choice in order to keep this place of hope. The night wind was still biting. Chen Yi sat in the corner of the supermarket, holding a crossbow, looking at the dark waste outside the window, silently calculating the next plan in his heart. Although the system's conversion function is powerful, its resources are limited, so he must be careful, and at the same time, he must join more people to stand firm in this apocalypse. And Zhan Zi's old nest is his next goal. The sky was just bright, and the wasteland was covered with a layer of gray smoke, and the air was filled with the smell of rotten and nitrazine. Chen Yi stood at the entrance of the supermarket, with an electric rod on his waist, holding the reinforced crossbow that he had just changed last night in his hand, and his eyes were coldly swept around. Behind him was Li Chang and 3 other young and powerful survivors, each holding a simple weapon in his hands. Although his equipment was shabby, he had a desperate decision on his face. "Brother Chen, do we really want to take the initiative to attack?" Li Chang asked in a low voice, with a little nervousness in his voice. Although he was very arrogant, the pressure brought by the wizard last night was still in sight. More than 30 people were popular. If it weren't for Chen Yi's traps and weapons, they would probably have been unable to hold on. "It must go." Chen Yi gritted his teeth and said in a low voice. "Zhan Zi will not let us go. Instead of waiting for them to attack again, it is better to find out their nests first and find opportunities to weaken them. If we can destroy their supplements, the pressure we keep the supermarket will be much smaller." A young man named Xiao Zhou next to him pointed his head and tightened a stick in his hand. "Brother Chen said it right. They left last night, but they spoke ruthlessly, and they probably would soon be back. We can't sit and wait." "Okay, then listen to Brother Chen." Li Chang patted his chest and grinned. "At worst, you can fight your life, and that helper knows that we are not easy to mess with." Chen Yi pointed his head and turned to look inside the supermarket. Hui Qian was bringing several people to give breakfast, several pieces of drying and half a bottle of water. Although it was too small to be exhausted, it was already a rare warmth for these survivors. Hui Qian noticed Chen Yi's gaze and walked over and said in a low voice, "You must be careful, it's not safe outside, and you will have any accidents." "Don't worry, I'll bring them back." Chen Yi patted her shoulder and said calmly, "You guard the supermarket, take good care of the wounded, and don't let small groups of plunderers come in while they are in the air. We'll go back." Hui Qian bit her lip, but still pointed her head, her eyes filled with worry. "Then you pay more attention and don't force it." Chen Yi didn't say anything more, and quickly left the supermarket with Li Chang, Xiao Zhou and others, and went to the direction where the plunderers retreated last night. The streets on the wasteland were broken, with collapsed buildings and scorched cars on both sides. Occasionally, you could hear the growls coming from afar, and you didn't know if it was a different creature or something else. They dare not be careless and try to walk the hidden roads between the alleys and the ruins to avoid exposing their tracks. After about half an hour of leaving, Chen Yi suddenly stopped and signaled everyone to squat down. He pointed to a broken factory in front of him and said in a low voice, "Last night when they retreated, they mentioned the East Old Factory. It is estimated that the nest is nearby. Look, there are footprints and fresh wool marks on it, which should be left by them." Li Chang looked in the direction he pointed, and indeed saw the footprints and traces of the tire pressure on the ground, extending towards the factory. He pointed his head and said in a low voice, "Brother Chen, what should we do? Go in directly? No, too many people are easily exposed." Chen Yi's eyebrows quickly murmured in his brain, "System, are there any equipment that can help you with confusing? It's best to be something that can reduce static. Check the host needs and temporarily unblock the secret installation replacement items, simple camouflage cloth, 15 units of materials, quiet boots, 10 units of materials/double. Current inventory of material assets, 20 units, shelves are being replenished, and it is expected to reach 35 units in 3 minutes. The system's mechanical sound came to an end, and Chen Yi's eyes lit up. Switch 2 silence boots and a camouflage cloth first. He murmured silently, and the shelf flashed in the brain with a shimmer. The 2 rough but soft boots and a gray-green old fabric appeared in his mind. He quickly took out the gears, divided the boots between himself and Li Chang, and put the camouflage cloth on several people, reducing the risk of being discovered. "Is this thing really useful?" Li Chang looked down at the boots on his feet, stepped on them for a few times, and found that his footsteps were indeed much smaller, and he couldn't help but grin. "Brother Chen, you can always make some weird things like this, it's so amazing. Don't waste your time, be careful." Chen Yi said in a low voice, bringing a few people carefully to the factory. The surroundings became more and more peaceful, but there was a tight breath in the air. There are several old warehouses and wire nets outside the factory. You can see a few plunderers patrolling the rules, holding knives and sticks in their hands, with harsh eyes. Chen Yi signaled everyone to lie down, hide behind a corner of a collapsed wall, and said in a low voice, "It seems that this is their nest. There are not many guards outside, so there should be many people in it. We can't be too stubborn. Let's touch in and see the situation first, find their supplement points before talking about it." Xiao Zhou pointed his head and asked in a low voice, "Brother Chen, if we can destroy their supplements, what should we do? Just burn them? The burn is too obvious and easy to be exposed." Chen Yi shook his head and his eyes turned cold. "After entering, I have a way to find a place where the materials are piled up. You are responsible for letting go, don't let people discover it." Several people reached a common understanding and took advantage of the gap between patrol robbers and quickly walked into a hole on the side of the factory and dived there. The interior of the factory was dim and damp, and the air was filled with the smell of iron and rottenness, and broken mechanical parts and garbage were piled up everywhere. But in the middle of the factory, there is a vacant lot filled with various materials, cans, mineral water, compressed milk, and even a few boxes of rolls and homemade simplicity weapons. "My God, this has helped the beast to take so much." Li Chang said in a low voice, his eyes red, "We have been using these materials for several months. Don't urge." Chen Yi held him down and said in a low voice, "No matter how much you have to be destined to take it. Look at how many people are guarding it, we have to deal with it quietly and not be amazed by others." He pointed to the several plunderers beside the pile of materials. They were sitting on a pile of broken wooden boxes chatting, holding a knife and stick in their hands, obviously not paying attention to the silence around Chen Yi. Chen Yi quickly recited silently in his brain, "System, it is best to change something that can destroy material resources. Check the host needs and temporarily unblock the exchange item, corrosive bottle, 20 units of materials, which can be packaged without sound corrosive materials, destroying food and water sources. Current inventory of material assets, 15 units, shelves are being replenished, and it can reach 35 units in 1 minute. Wait for a minute." Chen Yi gritted his teeth and signaled everyone to wait patiently. During this period, he carefully observed the terrain inside the factory and found that there was a small door next to the pile of materials leading to another area, where he could hear the growls and laughter coming from it. It was probably a rest area for the slingers and other snatchers. If the action is exposed, they are likely to be surrounded and must be quick to fight. 1 minute later, the system prompted that the material replenishment was completed. Chen Yi quickly changed a bottle of corrosive agent, held it in his hand, signaling Li Chang and Xiao Zhou to scatter, guarding the surrounding exits, and preparing for the response at any time. He took advantage of the fact that he was not paying attention, quietly approached the pile of materials, squatted down, and gently opened the corrosion bottle. A pungent smell came over the side, but fortunately the sound was very small and I didn't notice it. Chen Yi carefully poured the rotten agent onto several boxes of cans and mineral water packaging, and only heard a sizzling sound. The packaging was quickly cracked by the rotten, and the food and water inside flowed all over the ground, quickly becoming odorous. He quickly moved to another pile of materials and repeated the operation. In just a few minutes, nearly 1/3 of the supplement was destroyed by him. Fuck beautifully. Chen Yi felt relieved and was about to retreat. He suddenly heard a low voice coming from behind him. "Who is there?" He turned his head suddenly and found that a guard had reached the side at some point, staring at him with his eyes. The knife in his hand had already been lifted up. Chen Yi felt nervous. As soon as he ran over, the electric rod pierced the other party's chest. With a sizzling sound, Shou twitched and fell to the ground, but the scream before falling to the ground still surprised the others. "There are enemies! Come on!" Another guard shouted, and the inside of the factory was upset. More than a dozen plunderers rushed out of the door, holding weapons in their hands, and were swollen. Chen Yi gritted his teeth and shouted to Li Chang and others who were not far away, "Retreat! Don't fight!" Li Chang and Xiao Zhou and a few people rushed over quickly, retreated, and ran towards the hole on the side of the factory. But at this moment, a tall figure walked out of the crowd, and it was Chen Yi. He was covered in cheeks, and the scar on his left face looked particularly stunning under the dim light. He stared at Chen Yi with a cold look and grinned. "Yi, boy, you're a big boy. How dare you come to my house to play wild?" Chen Yi's heart sank, knowing that he couldn't run away, so he stood still, held the electric rod tightly, and said coldly, "Chen Yi, you have snatched so many things and hurt many people. Today I'm just here to collect some interest." "Interest? Ha ha ha." Chen Yi laughed and slapped the long knife in his hand. "Just like you, you dare to challenge me? Brothers, please keep them in my arms, don't let anyone go." The plunderers quickly scattered and surrounded Chen Yi and others in the center of the factory. Chen Yi knew that fighting hard was not an option, so he quickly recited in his brain, "System, replace the things that can be wiped out, hurry. Detect the host crisis, temporarily unlock the exchange item, smoke fog, 15 units of assets, which can create a smoke mask and retreat. Current material inventory, 15 units, the conversion was successful." The shelf was flashing with a shimmer, and a small round tube appeared in Chen Yi's hand. He pulled the pull ring without hesitation and threw it on the ground. With a bang, the heavy smoke instantly spread out, the visual line in the factory was blocked, and the thieves coughed and retreated. "Run!" Chen Yi shouted softly, and led Li Chang and others to the hole on the side. Although Zhan Erzi was so swept up by the smoke, he reacted very quickly. He rushed into the smoke and slashed in the direction of Chen Yi. Chen Yi dodged aside, and the knife wiped his arm and drew a blood mark. He gritted his teeth and fought back, and the electric rod poked hard on the waist of the gallop, but the other party was strong and powerful. He just hummed and kicked him in a hurry. Chen Yi was kicked back and almost fell down. "Boy, I will kill you next time." Chen Yi roared, but the smoke was too heavy, and he could not chase after him. He could only watch Chen Yi and others escape from the hole. Chen Yi led Li Chang and a few others to run wildly until he ran out of the factory for a few hundred meters before stopping to breathe. He lowered his head and looked at the wound on his arm, blood flowing, but fortunately it was not deep. Li Chang helped him and asked panting, "Brother Chen, is it okay? That guy is so cruel just now." "It's okay, it's a skin injury." Chen Yi gritted his teeth and stood up straight, saying in a low voice, "Although this time it was exposed, it at least destroyed a lot of them. They should not be able to attack on a large scale in a short time. We have to go back quickly and prepare for the next battle." Several people didn't dare to stay for a long time and quickly returned to the supermarket. When they returned to the supermarket, Hui Qian saw the blood on Chen Yi's arm at a glance. Her face changed and she hurriedly rushed over. "Are you injured? What's going on?" "It's okay, wipe it off." Chen Yi smiled strongly and slammed his hand. "We touched Chen Yi's nest and destroyed part of them, but they were discovered and almost ran out." After Hui Qian finished hearing this, she felt distressed, but she didn't say much, but just took out a sloppy belt to help him. Other survivors in the supermarket heard the news that they had both gratitude and admiration on their faces. A middle-aged woman named Mrs. Wang couldn't help but say, "Brother Chen, you are fighting for your life. If the helper comes back, what should we do?" Chen Yi was silent for a while, and the audience was filled with a low voice and determined, "They will not be good at slack off. Our supplement has been destroyed by us. The short-term internal attack will be weakened, but it won't take long to start a general attack. So from now on, everyone must be prepared. This battle determines whether we can survive on the wasteland. Brother Chen, what do you think?" "We all hear you." Li Chang stood up, his temperament was full of trust. "Other survivors are also struggling. Although they are afraid, they are more determined." "Okay." Chen Yi pointed at the head and began to arrange tasks. "The young and powerful person strengthened the defense line with me. There are more traps around the supermarket. The iron network can be thickened. Hui Qian, you are responsible for the insulting staff and materials, and ensure that everyone has basic supplements. Older and children help to organize the logistics and move all the useful things to the front line. We must do our best this time." "I understand." The crowd responded with peace of mind and immediately became busy. Chen Yi walked to the shelf and silently recited in his brain, "System, how much material stock is there? What can be replaced to improve defense? Current inventory of material, 10 units, shelf replenishment, and can reach 40 units in 5 minutes. Replaceable projects are updated, strengthened iron shield, 30 units of materials, simple mines, 25 units of materials, group defense iron network, 30 units of materials. Prepare it first, and after 5 minutes, replace mines and iron networks." Chen Yi gritted his teeth and immediately took Li Chang and others to strengthen the defense line. They used broken iron plates and wooden heads from the ruins to block the supermarket doors and windows more effectively, and dug a few pits around to prepare for burying traps. Hui Qian was busy cleaning up the manpower and supplies, and said to Chen Yi in a low voice, "There are 42 people in the supermarket now. 17 people can fight, 6 injured people, and the rest are the elderly and children. In terms of material resources, the compressed in water can be used for 3 days. If there are many people, it may not be enough." "I understand." Chen Yi pointed his head, his eyes fixed, "We are ready for 3 days. If the show comes, we will give him a battle and finally solve this threat." The night is getting deeper, and the atmosphere in the supermarket is very lively and busy. Everyone has their own duties and is preparing for the upcoming battle. Chen Yi stood at the door, holding the simple landmine that had just been replaced, looking down at the dusty streets on the wasteland, silently calculating the next plan in his heart. He knew that this battle was not only to guard the supermarket, but also to allow these survivors to see hope and to fight for a first line of life in this apocalypse. The night on the wasteland was so thick that it could not be melted. The air was filled with pungent nitrogen and rotten breath. There were a few sounds of low growlings from afar. I don't know if it was a different creature or a whisper. Chen Yi stood at the entrance of the supermarket, holding the simple landmine that had just been replaced in his hand, staring at the streets as he looked at him. Survivors around were busy strengthening the defense lines. The wire net was layered, the broken wooden boards and iron sheets were scattered on the window, and the trap pit outside the door was dug deeper, with spikes and simple machine connections for system replacement. Brother Chen, the mines have been buried. There are 5 points within 3 meters of the door. If you step on them, you will explode. Li Chang wiped his sweat and walked over to the low-sounding news. He still had a belt on his arm. He was injured when he entered the Hangul nest last night, but his face did not shrink at all. Okay, tell everyone, guard the roadblocks and don't let people come in. Chen Yi pointed his head and glanced at the inside of the supermarket. Hui Qian was carrying several women to divide the last supplies. Each person had half a piece of pressure and a small saliva. Although it was so small that it was so weak, it could at least keep everyone healthy. She noticed Chen Yi's gaze, walked over, and asked in a low voice, "Are you sure? If Zhan Zizhu helps people out of the nest, we have few people, so I'm afraid we can't stand it. You have to be on the top if you are not sure." Chen Yi gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "This is our hope. If you lose it, there will be nothing. Don't worry, I have a backup plan. As long as you sweep this wave, we can turn it over." Hui Qian pointed at the head, although she was still worried, looking at Chen Yi's calm eyes. She didn't say anything more, but just said lightly, "Then be careful, I will be responsible for the injury staff behind you and support you at any time." After speaking, she turned back and began to prepare simple medical supplies, several rolls of belts, a bottle of disinfectant, and a few painkillers supplemented by the system. At this moment, the street suddenly heard a rapid sound of footsteps, accompanied by a low roar and a metal collision. Chen Yi felt nervous and shouted, "Everything is ready, they are here. Keep the defense line and listen to me." 17 survivors who could beat at the entrance of the supermarket quickly took their seats, holding rods, machetes, and even a few simple crossbows that were converted from the system. No matter how many people there are, they have to come and never come back. Chen Yi snorted coldly, held the electric rod tightly, staring at the figure gradually appearing in the darkness. Sure enough, more than 40 plunderers came from both sides of the street, wearing torn leather jackets, holding various weapons in their hands, from machetes to long spears, and even a few homemade earth guns. The head is the slinger. The tall body looks particularly pressured in the night. The scar on the left face is terrifying under the light of the torch. He glanced at the supermarket's defense line, grinned, and his voice was cold. "Boy, you ruined my good things last night. Today I brought everyone to flatten your broken place. Hand over the property, or die. Stop talking." Chen Yi stood on the iron network and replied in a cold voice, "This place is our home, whoever comes to snatch it has no door. If you want to try it, just see how many lives you have." "Ha ha, stubborn." Zhan Zi laughed and slapped the long knife in his hand. "Brothers, I'll knock me out. Breaking this broken defense line, all the things inside are ours. Who can rush in first and collect 2 boxes of cans?" Under the re-earning, the plunderers were greatly excited, and they roared and rushed up. Chen Yi saw the situation and quickly pointed, "Crossman, shoot. Don't let them get close to the roadblock. Others guard the trap points and lead them to step on the mine." Swoosh swish 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 dash. Several crossbows fired at the same time, and the arrow shot at the plunderer who was rushing to the front with the sound of breaking through the air. 3 or 4 people were knocked down on the field, and the ground was stained with blood. But there are actually too many plunderers. The people behind him stepped on their companions' bodies and continued to move forward, and the iron net was smashed by a knife and stick. The first wave of people who hit the trap just stepped on it. With a bang, the mines were easily touched, and the flames and smoke instantly swallowed 5 or 6 people, and the sound of the night sky. "Mom, it's another fried medicine." Zhan Zizhai's face changed and he roared, "Be careful, don't step on it, wrap it up, and slowly grind them to death." The plunderers adjusted their strategies and divided them into several teams to approach the supermarket from different directions. Some attacked with long spears at a distance, while others smashed roadblocks with stones. Several gaps were quickly smashed into the wire net and wooden boards. Chen Yi saw the situation and his heart sank, knowing that hard guard is not a long-term plan. He quickly murmured in his brain, "System, how much material stock is? Is there anything that can defend against a large area?" Current material stock, 45 units. The host face-to-face threat was detected, and the ultimate function of the temporary unlocking system is temporary castle, 40 units of material. After activation, the supermarket will be transformed into an indestructible fortress within 30 minutes, strengthening the defense lines and structures to resist high-strength attacks. Change? Switch. Chen Yi did not hesitate at all and immediately confirmed it. A dazzling white light flashed across the shelf, and then an invisible force radiated from the inside of the supermarket, and only a click sound was heard. The broken wall of the supermarket began to be automatically repaired, and the surface was covered with a thick metal feeling. The window was sealed by the steel plate, and the iron net and roadblock at the door were instantly reinforced, turning into a solid protective wall, and even the ground became harder. The trap points were optimized by the system, and the hiddenness and damage force were greatly improved. What's this? Li Chang was stunned, looking at the change in front of him, and couldn't help but feel shocked. The other survivors were also shocked, but immediately they burst into a low roar, and their military spirits were greatly boosted. "Don't be stunned, guard the defense!" Chen Yi shouted, holding the electric rod tightly and standing behind the defense wall. "This is our trump card. They can't come in within 30 minutes. The crossbowman continues to shoot, don't let them get closer." After the supermarket was turned into a fortress, its defense strength was increased several times. The swords and sticks of the plunderers hit the defense wall, leaving only clean marks and could not break through. The crossbowman stood at a high place, shot continuously through the shooting hole in the defense wall, and knocked down 7 or 8 wizards. The optimization of the trap also took effect. A plunderer stepped on it and with a bang, the explosion was nearly twice as large as before, and it directly exploded 3 people, with minced meat and blood all over the ground. "Boss, this place is very evil, it's not enough to force it." A subordinate of a plunderer was filled with fear and rushed to Zhang Ziji and said in a low voice, "We have already lost more than 10 of us. If we continue to slap, we may have to be completely defeated." "Waste!" Zhang Zi roared angrily, slapped the man on the face, then stared at the direction of the supermarket, gritted his teeth. "I don't believe that this broken place can be hard forever. I will give it to me, and I will use the dirt gun to smash it, and I will smash it even if I smash it." Several plunderers holding homemade earth guns quickly stepped forward and found a few times on the wall. Although the spider left some dents on the wall, they still could not break through. Chen Yi took advantage of the opportunity to point the crossbowman to counterattack, shot out several arrows, and knocked down 2 gun-holding plunderers. Inside the supermarket, Hui Qian was busy treating the injured. Although the defense wall slammed most of the attacks, just a few crossbowmen were hit by the stone while shooting, and retreated with blood. She used a slut to comfort her, and said softly, "Don't be afraid, Chen Yi and the others are standing in front, we will definitely be able to hold on. You can hold on, I'll deal with it immediately." An injured young man gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Sister Hui, what's going on outside? Can we really keep hurting?" "Yes." Hui Qian was calm and raised her head to look at Chen Yi's figure after the wall. Chen Yi said, "This place is as solid as gold in 30 minutes, and the plunderers cannot come in. You should worry about being injured, don't think too much." The battle outside became more and more intense, and the battle was too fierce for a long time to attack. His face was blue and finally he was from the upper side. He slammed the long knife, took more than a dozen elite subordinates, and pushed it to the defense wall, chopped and smashed it with all his might, and even tried to pry a long spear to open the shooting hole. Chen Yi saw this, snorted coldly, and shouted to Li Chang, "Teacher, take a few people to guard the left side, I'll go to the right to meet this guy." "Okay, Brother Chen." Li Chang pointed his head and took someone to guard the roadblock on the left. Chen Yi pushed to the right. Through the shooting hole, the electric rod suddenly poked out, and with a sizzling sound, the light hit a slasher's chest, and the other party twitched and fell to the ground. When he showed his eyes turned cold. He slashed at Chen Yi's electric rod with a knife. The knife collided with the rod body, making a harsh metal sound. Boy, what's the ability to hide in this urchin shell? There are some options out there. Chen Yi roared, filling his face, trying to anger Chen Yi. Single choice? Okay. Chen Yi sneered, and suddenly changed a simple smoke from the system, pulled the pull ring and threw it out, and a bang sound, the smoke instantly spread, covering the wizard's visual line. He took advantage of the opportunity to pull out from a small exit on the side of the defense wall, holding a power rod and a short knife that was replaced from the system, and straight into the penis. Looking for death. Although Chen Yi coughed so hard that he was so angry that he reacted very quickly. He slapped his sword and slashed at Chen Yi. Chen Yi dodged his body and poked the electric rod hard on the waist of the rogue, but the other party was strong and powerful. He just hummed and kicked him in one slight manner. Chen Yi was kicked back and felt a pain in his chest. Chen Yi! Hui Qian saw this scene in the supermarket and couldn't help but shout, but she knew she couldn't help but gritted her teeth and continued to treat the injured, saying to the people around her in a low voice, "Hurry up, prepare all the useful belts. If he is injured, we will have to respond in the first time." Chen Yi gritted his teeth and calmed down, and fought fiercely with the slinger. The long sword of the Gallop was strong and heavy, and each strike was murderous, while Chen Yi was reluctant to deal with his flexible body skills and the numbing effect of the electric rod. He knew that his body strength was limited and he could not fight for a long time, so he had to fight quickly. So he silently recited in his brain, "System, it can be used to recreate the other party's weapons, hurry. Current inventory of material, 5 units, shelf replenishment, temporarily unblocking and replacement project, high-pressure gun, 10 units of material, need to wait 1 minute for replenishment." The system sounded, and Chen Yi felt nervous, knowing that time was not waiting for anyone. He avoided Chen Yi's attack, and countered with a short knife, trying to delay time. "Boy, I can't escape!" Chen Yi roared and the long knife slashed down. Chen Yiming slapped it with a short knife frame, but his arms were numb and blood was poured out from his tiger's mouth. He gritted his teeth and swung, hid the next blow, and immediately grabbed a handful of sand on the ground and sprinkled it towards the spider's eyes. Ah! Chen Yi was stunned by the sand and moved around. Chen Yi took advantage of the opportunity to move forward. The electric rod kept poking his chest and arms. The electric light sizzled. Chen Yi finally let out a painful roar, and his body twitched and took a few steps back. At this moment, the system prompted the response, "Material replenishment is completed, and the high-pressure gun is successfully replaced." The shelf was flashing with a shimmer, and a small but stronger electric gun appeared in Chen Yi's hand. Without hesitation, he rushed forward and slammed Chen Yi's chest. With a sucking sound, the powerful current instantly swept through Chen Yi's defense. He twitched and fell to the ground, staring at Chen Yi unwillingly, and his face was full of regret. He said, "Who are you, mother?" "The one who wants your life." Chen Yi snorted coldly, and the gun poked it again. Chen Yi finally couldn't hold it back and fainted on the ground. The other plunderers saw the situation and the military collapsed. They were shocked, "Bosses down. Run." They also scattered their weapons and fled in all directions. The original attack collapsed in an instant. "Brother Chen, it's awesome." Li Chang rushed out with several people. Seeing Chen Yi falling to the ground, he couldn't help but yell. The other survivors also burst into low roars, and their faces were full of happiness after the disaster. Chen Yi gasped, wiped the sweat from his head, looked down at the unconscious slut, and did not replenish the knife, but said to Li Chang, "Push him up, don't kill him, it's useful to keep it. Others clean up the injured, clean up the defense line, and don't let small plunderers come and get the cheaper." "Okay." Li Chang pointed his head and quickly took the Zhanlua up and dragged it back to the supermarket. Chen Yi walked back into the defense wall. Hui Qian saw that he was covered in blood and hurriedly rushed over to support him, her eyes filled with light. "You're okay?" "I was scared to death just now." "It's okay, it's a skin injury." Chen Yi smiled strongly and patted her hands. "This time I've been watching you behind you, thank you for your hard work." Hui Qian didn't say anything, but just silently helped him to hurt his mouth. Survivors in the supermarket began to clear the losses. Although several people were seriously injured, fortunately no one was killed. The temporary fortress effect of the anti-wall wall is about to end. The metallic feeling on the outer wall of the supermarket gradually fades away, returning to the original broken model, but the victory of this battle has ignited a lot of hope in everyone's heart. Chen Yi sat in the corner of the supermarket, holding the gun, and silently chanted to the system in a low voice, "How much is the stock of material resources left? Can you change some medical resources? Current inventory of material assets, 5 units, shelves are being replenished, and it can reach 20 units in 5 minutes. Changeable items, basic medical package, 10 units of material resources. Switch 1. Chen Yi pointed his head and said to Hui Qian immediately, "There will be some medical supplies when you go to the injured. We will get everyone recovered quickly." Hui Qian pointed her head, looked at Chen Yi's tired face, and said lightly, "You have to rest too. You have almost never satisfied your eyes these days, and your body will collapse if you continue like this. I will rest after solving the problem of Zhan Zizhu." Chen Yi shook his head and looked out the window with a calm look. Although they were recreated this time, they were not able to solve the threat. "I have to think about how to use Zhan Zizhu, a prisoner, to completely dismantle their group. The night wind is still biting, and the nitrazine on the waste soil has not yet dissipated." Although the survivors in the supermarket were tired, they had a long-lasting smile on their faces. They knew that the victory of this battle not only guarded the shelter, but also allowed them to see hope for survival in the end of the world. Chen Yi silently calculated the next plan and was ready to face greater challenges. The morning light on the wasteland broke through the dusty fog, casting a few faint light on the broken outer wall of the supermarket. Chen Yi stood at the door, holding the gun in his hand, looking at the far street with a cold look. Although the battle last night recreated a group of plunderers, he knew in his heart that this victory was only temporary. Zhan Zizhu was captured, but his men were still alive. As long as these people were still there, they would lie in the dark like poisonous snakes and come back to the ground at any time. Inside the supermarket, survivors are cleaning up the post-war battle. Several young people wiped the blood on the anti-wall with rags. Hui Qian was busy changing medicine to the injured staff. Her face was full of fatigue, but her eyes were still gentle and calm. Jean Eyre, who was struck in the corner, had woken up, and under his cheeks, there were 2 cold eyes. He lowered his voice and tried to slim the rope, but was kicked in the chest by Li Chang, and hummed in pain. "Old thing." Li Chang gritted his teeth and stared at him, and said in a low voice, "If Brother Chen hadn't saved your life, you would have never been there. If you were torture again, I would kill you directly." Zhan Zi sneered and said, "You think you're done just by catching me? I have many people under me. They will come to save me sooner or later and flatten your broken place." Chen Yi heard this, turned around and walked over, squatted down, and looked at Zhan Zixiao coldly. "Save you? They are almost the same in their own right. I have half of your supplements, and I have lost so many people last night. Now it's just a group of straighters. Zhan Zixiao, this game is over. End? Ha. Zhan Zixiao grinned, full of disdain. "Boy, do you really think you can destroy us? On the wasteland, the strong ones are the king. You who help you, he will be swallowed up sooner or later." Chen Yi's eyes turned cold and he stood up, not paying attention to the slaps pick. He turned his head and said in a low voice to Li Chang, "Look at him, don't let him play tricks. I'll make arrangements. Today we will take the initiative to attack and snatch their nests and solve this threat in a complete way. Take a shot?" Li Chang was stunned, and immediately pointed, with a cheerful look on his face, "Okay, Brother Chen. I have wanted to fuck this helping beast for a long time. Tell me, what can I do?" Chen Yi did not rush to answer, but walked to the shelf and silently recited in his brain, "System, how much material stock is it? What large-scale combat equipment can be replaced? Current inventory of material, 25 units, shelves are being replenished, and it can reach 50 units in 5 minutes. Replaceable items are updated, easy-to-explosion set, 30 units of material resources, reinforced armored car, 40 units of material resources, group weapon pack, 35 units of material resources. In 5 minutes, change the blasting set and group weapon pack." He murmured silently, then turned his head and shouted to Hui Qian, "Count the number of people you can fight, prepare medical supplies, we are going to go far today." Hui Qian spoke, put down the belt in her hand, walked over and asked in a low voice, "You really want to take people to their nests? This is too dangerous. Although Zhang Lingzhou was arrested, there must be many people guarding it there, and there will be ambushing every time. I know the danger, but if we don't solve the future, we will never be at ease." Chen Yi stopped her and said calmly, "This time it is not only for the supermarket, but also for all survivors. If the power of the exaggerated power can be destroyed, the plunderers around him will not dare to move us easily anymore, and the supermarket can truly become a shelter." Hui Qian was silent for a while, and finally said lightly, "Okay, I'll go with you. I understand medicine. Whenever someone is injured, he can be treated as soon as possible. Stay." Chen Yi shook his head, his eyes were gentle and unquestionable. "The supermarket needs you to sit in the town, and the injured and the elderly need people to take care of. I will take Li Chang and the others and come back soon." Hui Qian bit her lip and no longer argued, but just said in a low voice, "Then you promise me that you must come back safely." "Don't worry." Chen Yi patted her shoulder and then shouted to the public, everyone heard it. "Last night's battle was just the beginning. Today we have to take the initiative to attack and solve the threat of the plunderers. Follow me with great force." The older and injured people stayed to guard the supermarket, and Hui Qian was responsible for placing logistics. "I'm ready and set off in half an hour." "Okay." The supermarket roared and the 17 survivors who could fight quickly gathered, holding rods, machetes and several crossbows in their hands. Although the equipment was simple, the military was high. Li Chang grinned and patted his chest and said, "Brother Chen, tell me, how to fuck you? Let's take that helping the beast this time." Chen Yi clicked the head, and after 5 minutes, the system material replenishment was completed. He changed the easy-to-explosion set and group weapon pack. The shelf was flashing with a shimmer, and several rough but solid blasting devices and a bunch of simplicity weapons appeared on the shelf, including several short knives, several steel tubes, and even 2 homemade grenade guns. He quickly distributed weapons, handed the blasting set to a few young men with a low voice, and explained in a low voice, "This thing is powerful and is used to blow up the defense line at the key moment, so as not to waste money." Arranged everything, Chen Yi took his team to open the supermarket and headed towards the old factory in the east, the old house in the east. They walked along the path between the ruins to avoid exposure, and at the same time, they sent Xiao Zhou and another young man to explore the way in advance to ensure that they were not ambushed. After about an hour of leaving, the broken wheel of the factory appeared in the field. There were several plunderers outside patrolling the script, holding knives and sticks in their hands. It was obvious that they had not received any news that Zhang Zi was captured. "Brother Chen, there are not many guards outside, and there are probably not many people in it." Xiao Zhou came back to report and said in a low voice, "They lost a lot of people last night, and now the enthusiasm of the people should be very low. Good opportunity." Chen Yi pointed his head and quickly arranged the plan. Divided into 2 teams. Li Chang led one team to dive from the side, responsible for leading the defense. I led another team to blast from the front, and used a blasting set to blow up the defense line, and quickly fight and don't give them time to react. "I understand." Li Chang pointed his head and walked to the side of the factory with 8 people. Chen Yi and the rest of the people were lying behind a ruin not far from the front, waiting for the time. He whispered to a young man named Amin next to him, "You will be responsible for detonating the first blasting device and blowing up the iron network. We will rush in and go straight to their supplements and burn their resources. Ah Ming was slit, his palms were covered in sweat, but his eyes were calm. Don't worry, Brother Chen, I won't fall off the chain. A moment later, a resonance came from Li Chang, and several stones were thrown to the side of the factory, making a dong-dong sound. The patrol guard was immediately attracted and ran towards him. Chen Yi saw the situation and immediately shouted in a low voice, "Go on." Ah Ming quickly ignited the lead of the blasting device, threw it at the iron network, and a loud bang sounded loudly, and a big hole was blown out of the iron network, and the smoke was spreading. Chen Yi took the man up, holding an electric gun in front, and ran into several reactionary plunderers head-on. The electric light sizzled and knocked down 2 of them on the spot. Evil! Come on! A plunderer roared, and the inside of the factory was in trouble. More than 20 plunderers rushed out of the room, holding weapons in their hands, and swaying. But they clearly did not expect to be attacked by the active forces. Their teams were scattered, and their military spirits were depressed. Chen Yi took the trouble to enter the factory and took the people straight to the central supplement. At the same time, he shouted to the people behind him, "Brief their assets, don't stay." Several young people quickly ignited the torch and threw it at the pile of supplies. The cans and the packing of compressed milk suddenly ignited, and the smoke rolled up. The plunderers saw the situation and roared and tried to snatch the flames, but Chen Yi and Li Chang joined forces and forced their attacks. The crossbow shot swoosh and the arrow knocked down one enemy after another with the sound of breaking through the air. The grenade gun was also used. After several shots, the thunderers flew hard in blood, and they were shouted. "Mom, who dares to burn my things?" A plunderer with a face full of flesh rushed out, holding a long spear in his hand. He should be the second master of Zhanling's was men. He roared and rushed towards Chen Yi, his long spear thrust straight into his chest. Chen Yi dodged his body, and the gun stabbed the other party hard on the waist. Then he kicked him over, and a short knife pressed against his neck. He said coldly, "Zhan Zi has been caught by us, and you have lost your supplement. Surrender, or die. I'm fighting with you." Erdun's family gritted their teeth and tried to stab, but Chen Yi raised his hand and fell, blood sprayed, and the other party was frustrated. Other plunderers saw the situation, and the military spirit collapsed. Some people cut down their weapons and knelt down to beg for robbery. Some people turned around and fled, but they were all caught up by Chen Yi's people, and they were not spared. After less than half an hour of war, the force of the plunderers in the factory was destroyed, and the replenishment of the fire was ignited into a sea of fire, and the smoke rushed directly into the sky. Chen Yi gasped heavily, wiped the blood on his face, and looked around. After confirming that there was no threat, he said to Li Chang in a low voice, "Clean down the number of people, see if there are any injuries, and move the useful things back, so don't waste money." "Okay, Brother Chen." Li Chang pointed his head and started to clean up the battleground. They found some unburned cans and water, and several similar weapons. Although there are not many, it is already a big harvest for supermarkets. Chen Yi stood outside the factory, looking down at the wasteland under his feet, and an inexplicable sense of relaxation surged in his heart. The power of the gallop was finally uprooted, and the cancer that was lying on the wasteland disappeared. When they returned to the supermarket, everyone was carrying the spoils of war and their faces were filled with joy after the victory. Hui Qian saw Chen Yi coming to her safely, and finally let go of her heart. She hugged him, with a slight light in her eyes. "It's good that you're fine. I've been worried, afraid that you won't come back. I said I would come back, so I won't break my promise." Chen Yi smiled, patted her on the shoulder, and then turned to everyone and said, "The power of the scoundrel has been destroyed by us. Their lair has become a ruin. From today on, we don't have to worry about their threat anymore. This is our victory and the beginning of our new life." A low growl and cry broke out in the supermarket, and the old man and the children also showed long-term smiles. Chen Yi looked at them and felt a sense of responsibility. He knew that it was not enough to destroy the plunderers, and the threat on the wasteland was gone. To truly let everyone survive, the supermarket must be upgraded to a real shelter base, attract more survivors to join, and establish a new order belonging to them. In the next few days, Chen Yi used the system's replacement function to start a large-scale transformation of the supermarket. He changed the reinforced building materials and anti-wear facilities, strengthened the outer wall of the supermarket into a thick steel structure, sealed the steel plates in the window, leaving only a few injection holes, and multiple iron gates and traps were installed at the door to ensure that they could stay on top even if there were large-scale attacks. At the same time, he also changed more medical supplies and food reserves to ensure basic needs within the shelter. Can the system be able to replace the facilities that can be operated for a long time? Such as energy or farming equipment? Chen Yi silently said in his brain, trying to transform the supermarket from a simple shelter into a self-sufficient base. Detection of host requirements, unlocking the ultimate function, protecting the base module. Current material stock, 60 units, replacement items, simple solar power generator, 50 units of material, basic heat sink, 40 units of material. After the change, the system will enter sleep mode, providing only basic material replenishment, and the host needs to operate the base by itself. The system sounds up, and Chen Yi chose to change without hesitation. The shelves were flashed with dazzling white light, and a rough but solid solar power generator appeared on the open space of the supermarket, and there was also a set of simple warm room greenhouse components next to it. Chen Yi took Li Chang and others and spent 3 days building the generator and the room. Although the equipment is simple, the power generation can provide basic lighting and heating for supermarkets. The greenhouses are equipped with system-transformed drought-tolerant crop seeds. Although the production is limited, it at least allows everyone to see the hope of self-sufficiency. At the same time, Chen Yi sent people to spread the news and told the surrounding survivors that the supermarket has become a safe shelter base and everyone is welcome to join. As long as you are willing to abide by the rules, you can get food and shelter. After the news was released, survivors came to the door, some were alone wanderers, and some were families with family members. Although they were yellow-skinned, they all had hope in their eyes. By 1 month, the number of people in the shelter has increased to nearly 100. Although the space is swelling, the atmosphere is getting hotter with more people. Chen Yi, will the material resources be poor if this continues? Hui Qian took advantage of the empty file where she distributed the food and asked in a low voice. Although Gao Xing saw more and more people joining, she was also worried about the pressure of resources. There is no problem in a short time. Chen Yi smiled and patted the shelf. Although the system enters dormant, the basic material resources can still be replenished. As long as the crops in the greenhouse are mature, we can relieve stress. Next, I plan to organize everyone to explore the surrounding ruins, collect more resources, and train a defense team to ensure the safety of the base. Hui Qian pointed at Chen Yi's tired but determined face and said lightly, "It's really not easy for you to become a regular store employee to everyone's support now. I'm very proud to be able to walk with you to this day." Chen Yi was stunned and smiled immediately. He didn't say anything, but looked down at the gun in his hand, and a warm feeling surged in his heart. He knew that although the end of the world was cool, with these people in Hui Qian's company, he was no longer alone. A few months later, the shelter base began to take shape, and the supermarket had been completely transformed into a small fortress, with a simple wall built around it with ruins, and the interior was divided into residential areas, medical areas and storage areas. The crops in the greenhouse began to harvest. Although there were not many, they allowed everyone to eat fresh food. The solar generator was running stably, and the lights at night became a bright color on the wasteland, attracting more survivors to come and surrender. Chen Yi stood at the height of the base, looking at the dusty wasteland far away, and said to Hui Qian beside him, "I just wanted to guard this small broken supermarket at the beginning, but I didn't expect to be able to reach this day. This place is now a place of hope for everyone." Hui Qian leaned against him, smiled, and said lightly, "This is not only a place of hope, but also our home." "Chen Yi, what are your plans next?" "Plan?" Chen Yi was silent for a while, then raised his head and looked farther away, and his lingering spirit was firm. "There are too many threats on the wasteland. We have to continue to expand the base, join more people, and explore more resources. One day, we will not only live, but also rebuild this land and make the last days the past. Hui Qian pointed his head, held his hand, her eyes filled with longing. Okay, I will always be with you and rebuild this dawn together. The dawn light shone on the two people. Although the wasteland was still deserted, the laughter and busy figure in the base made this land more than a living. Chen Yi grew from an ordinary store employee to a symbol of hope on the wasteland. He knew that the road was still long, but as long as everyone was together, the dawn of the future would eventually come.